an incredible weekend of football. I think the Big 12, this was without doubt one of the most shocking weeks in the Big 12. I don't think there's any doubt. Damage was done. I think the percentages of the Big 12 getting multiple teams into the college football playoff are very, very low. You would need some kind of titanic shift at the top of the AP poll at this point. You look at Texas Tech going to Ames and absolutely shocking Iowa State. It clearly was a statement game for Joey McGuire as a head coach at Texas Tech. It was a statement game for Taj Brooks and Baron Morton. This was everything you wanted as a fan of the Raiders. This was everything you wanted as a fan of the Big 12 until you recognize that this was one of the most damaging losses of the year. I think there is a really good chance that Iowa State has no path back to the college football playoff. Same thing, certainly for our friends in Manhattan, Kansas. And I know every Monday on this show, I sit here and I come to you humbly with great humility.
The Monty tradition.
The Monty tradition when I say I told you so. Avery Johnson is absolutely crippling Kansas State football right now. His inability to play the quarterback position from behind when trailing in a big game is, again, crippling K-State. The interceptions, the inability to read a defense. Jake, I think the K-State and Iowa State losses are absolutely damaging to the Big 12's hope of getting two into the college football playoff.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. I mean, I just think that the Big 12 is doing exactly what everybody was concerned would happen, which is there's only going to be one team that gets into the college football playoff for the Big 12. And I think, unfortunately, that's just because you're just not winning the games you need to win. And I understand that Texas Tech is a good football team. You know, I understand that K-State has seen some things this season, obviously the BYU game and others. But the fact is whether we like it or not, the Big 12 is only good enough right now to put one team in the college football playoff, which is obviously your conference champion. And that's the hard part, because we're no longer able to have the conversation around, well, you know, can a one-loss Big 12 team get into the college football playoff? And I don't think so. I don't think that's the case. I think that you would have had to have had, two, undefeateds going to your conference championship game. And then hopefully, because you were undefeated going to the championship game, then we could have a conversation about two in the playoff. But I think when you've got major nameplates like, Iowa State, Kansas State losing, obviously that's incredibly damaging to your conference. And I always go out of my way to make the point that the college football playoff and your appearances in it make all the difference in the world from a conference revenue standpoint. And that's just something to keep in the back of your minds when you think about the Big 12. Like, you've got these other conferences that are probably getting two in. Like, the ACC is probably going to get two in. Obviously, the Big 10 and the SEC are probably getting three each, if not four. So I just look at it and I say that the Big 12 has serious work to do. And yes, all the K-State haters in the comments talking about how, Avery Johnson has brought them back from behind in the Colorado game and these different opportunities. The reality of the situation is, he's not good enough to do what you need him to do. He's not good enough to lead you to a conference championship. Yeah,
I would agree, obviously.
Any way you slice it.
Yeah, and I think K-State is who we thought they were. And I feel bad for K-State fans, because this, obviously, we're going to talk about Ohio State and Penn State coming up. You look at the performance that Ohio State got out of Will Howard this weekend, and all of this talk about how you're better off without Will Howard, and it's nonsense. Avery Johnson is going to be a very good quarterback in college football, in my opinion. It just isn't right now, and I don't know that it's next year. Avery Johnson is that quarterback that needs a huge mental growth spurt. He's a guy who has to understand he got beat repeatedly down the stretch in that game by disguising defenses, and this is not the first time we have seen this. It's how they lost to BYU. It is why Avery Johnson has struggled this year. And the Colorado loss is very interesting, because we've had a lot of conversations with K-State fans about what happened in that game. If Travis Hunter is playing in that game, K-State would have 3 losses right now.
Right.
There's no doubt about that. And I think you look at the Big 12, unfortunately, all of the naysayers coming into the season have predicted this perfectly. You have one team, and nobody thought it was going to be BYU, but you have one team that has a chance to go undefeated. It's not likely, in my opinion. I think the gambit is just too much. Starting with BYU and Utah this week, I think Utah is trying to save their season, and they're going to try and do that by crushing the dreams of BYU going undefeated. And trust me when I say, forget how Utah has looked previously. This is a game changer for BYU and for Utah. If you don't think what happened this weekend is absolutely motivating Utah in their preparation for BYU this week, knowing that BYU is the only undefeated team in this league, you're out of your mind. I think that is going to be the game of the year now.
Well, I just think it's a cherry on top thing that the milkshake needed, if you will. Like, the game is already loaded with,
Yes.
hey, we hate each other. And then now the dynamic of, hey, BYU is the only undefeated team in the Big 12, combined with the fact that Utah had huge expectations coming into the season. Utah's well past saving their season, but if you can wreck BYU's season as a Utah fan and as the Utah football team itself goes, that's obviously a feel-good notch in your belt, if you will, as far as the season is concerned. And I just think, again, this is why, these two getting into the same conference. Yeah, this is why, these two getting into the same conference was so crucial, because this is the kind of situation we've all been looking forward to. The only difference is we thought it would be, Utah at 8-0 and BYU at 1-4 in the conference.
This has a chance, Jake, to be one of the classic Holy Wars we've ever seen.
100%. And I think, I think, and like he said, we'll get to Will Howard in a minute, but I think, Will Howard and Jake Retzloff share kind of a similar plight in life in terms of their recent football games. Will Howard went into that game having to have a good enough performance to win the ball game, and Jake Retzloff is about to play his first Holy War, having led his team to an undefeated record up to this week. And it'd be nice for him to go on the road and for them to go on the road and handle business. And again, I just have to say, if you can beat Utah, like I don't disagree that you have a tough slate the rest of the way. But certainly the teams left on your schedule are beatable. I'm not saying they're pushovers, but they're definitely beatable. There's no one left on the schedule after Utah who is like, oh man, they're just far and away better than us. And I think that's the thing for BYU that should be motivating. Hey, if we go out and we prepare and we handle our business, we do all the small things, we do the things we've been doing, we treat this game just like any other game, right? We're going to prepare, we're going to take the emotion out of it, and we're going to go do our job. Then I think you're going to get a good result. But if we're watching this game and, if we're watching this game and the emotions are too big for certain players, we're going to have a very different conversation a week from now.
Yeah, totally agree. And I just think, I'll say again, the stars come out on the biggest stages. And I think that we have seen that across this conference. I cannot believe. I just cannot believe how good Taj Brooks is.
Seriously.
I know that I have talked about Taj Brooks all year, but I think it is vitally important that we look at Taj Brooks now as one of the best backs in the country. I've told you all year, I think he's the best running back in the conference. I think Taj Brooks, the running back at Texas Tech, is top 3 running backs in the country. I'm not taking anybody over Austin Ginty, and I don't care if you played your mom's sewing circle. When you run the way that Ginty's run, you look at Taj Brooks, there's not a whole lot of backs I'm taking over Taj Brooks. Ginty be damned. I think that Taj Brooks deserves a heck of a lot of credit, and I think it's important to say, I think Joey McGuire deserves a lot of credit. This was a game that probably determined his future trajectory in Lubbock. If we're being honest, and this show is all about the truth in sports talk, if Joey McGuire had not won out and he had not gone to Ames and won, there was a chance that the chance for him losing his job and the voices of people talking about replacing Joey McGuire in Lubbock were going to get louder. That's all over with now. This is a team that is now bowl eligible. This is a team with one of the best quarterbacks in the country. I think, again, one of the best running backs in the country that has got to figure it out defensively. But Joey McGuire, Baron Morton, and Taj Brooks, how can you not be happy for them today? This was one of those character-defining, legacy-defining wins if you're a football player. If you are Taj Brooks, this is one of those wins where I think you're going to remember this. When you're talking to your family about your career at Texas Tech, this is one of those games you're going to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, and I think they deserve all the credit in the world. And I also think an important point of this game that if you're a Texas Tech fan should be really encouraging for you inside of the game, like little things, is if you look at how they scored their points, like when they went about doing that, he came out and dropped 10 points on the road in the first quarter. That's a great sign of where your football team is at, your preparedness level, what you're trying to do, the belief in the game plan. And then I look at, the second half, you come out, you put a touchdown up in the third quarter. Your defense holds them to no points.
Yeah.
And, you're putting yourself in position to win a closer ball game, which ultimately led to Taj obviously running it into the end zone and putting you over the top. And I think that, Texas Tech is, again, I've been saying it all season long, and it pisses Texas Tech fan off, but you should be better, right? This is a conversation we shouldn't be wondering if Texas Tech had a shot to win this ball game. Like last week we talked about hey, if they go in and Taj can have more than 100, if he can be like 110, 120, you're going to be right in the middle of this ball game. And sure enough, what does he have? 25 carries for 122 yards on 4.9 yards per carry. That's exactly what it should be. So I agree. Today, Joey deserves a lot of credit.
Yes.
And I do think, and I felt it right after watching the game, I do think after this game, Joey's earned another year. And maybe this is the Neil Brown syndrome for Texas Tech fan. I don't know. But
Dave
this
Aranda
guy
at Baylor,
right? This guy's clearly turned this team around a little bit.
Yeah, and you look at Baylor's win this weekend. I don't know what you say to Sonny Dykes at TCU. I truly do not. I mean, again, where did that defense go? You look at some of the performances around this league, and it just was a shocking week in the Big 12. It truly was. You have an 8-0 BYU sitting on top of it, and I know you guys don't want to hear about it. And I know last week you guys were all upset that we talked about how critical the BYU-Utah rivalry is. Well, here it is. They're 4.5-point favorites going to up to Salt Lake City to Rice-Eccles Stadium. BYU is a 4.5-point favorite. I think the last time they played was 2021, and who won that game?
Yeah.
BYU did. So, in my opinion, this is one of the biggest weeks of the year. I don't care if it is 10 degrees outside. I'm firing up the smoker. We're making like 7,000 wings, and we're going to watch some football on Saturday.
Yeah,
because I am absolutely here for it.